One of the CIA's greatest spies, Dmitry Polyakov, is caught by the KGB and strip-searched. His head is held in an arm lock to prevent him taking poison.
The invisible front, that's what it was in the Cold War. And for us it was war. The soldiers may have been on alert, but for us and the others who went out into the cold, it was actual war.
In fact, throughout the 80s, the CIA had been carefully establishing agents within Soviet intelligence and defense circles. Precious sources, like avionics expert Adolf Tolkachev, seen here on his way to a meeting in Moscow with his CIA contact. The KGB suddenly started to arrest the CIA's most important Soviet spies.
In 1985, we began to lose cases, by which I mean Soviet officials working for us, and some of them disappeared. This led us to believe that something was wrong. It did not lead us to believe, aha, there must be a mole.
In 1991, Sandy Grimes joined the team investigating the CIA's agent losses. In charge, Jean Vertefeuille, now suspicious there was a KGB mole in their ranks.
Trying to pin down a counterintelligence case when you're looking for a mole is always a very difficult and long-term job. When we compiled a list of how many people could have done it, we came up with 198 people.
The mole hunt took 3 years, homing in on CIA counterintelligence officer Aldrich Ames. The FBI filmed him secretly in Bogota in 1993.
I was walking up and down, wondering what had happened to my KGB contact, who had been there an hour earlier. I was reasonably alert, but I didn't see the surveillance. And I suppose it was frustrating for the FBI because they were scared to death of me seeing surveillance. So they had to stay way back. As a result, they never saw me doing anything. They had no evidence of any operational activity on my part.
The FBI staked out Ames's house and tapped his phones. The breakthrough had come from CIA analysis of his bank statements.
We had just received records from one of the banks Rick had. And Dan is reading these things off, and I'm entering them in the computer. And my God, it was unbelievable. On 17 May, Rick had reported having had a lunch with his Soviet contact, Chuvakin. 18 May, there's a deposit into his checking account for $9,000.
On the 21st of February in 1994, Ames was arrested for spying, along with his wife Rosario, after years of high living.
Shock, depression, instant recognition of, one's life flashes before one. A sense of things coming to an end, but no sense of relief. It's much more painful than that.
In April 1985, Aldrich Ames had walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington and started selling secrets to the KGB. They paid him a total of $2.7 million.
Well, the reasons that I did what I did in April of 1985 were personal, banal, and amounted really to kind of greed and folly. Simple as that.
I attribute it heavily to Rosario. She was the one who was interested in spending money and who liked to live high on the hog. And I think he wanted sort of to buy her love, and the way to buy her love was to get her expensive things.
Ames had no illusions about the real price of his treachery.
I knew quite well when I gave the names of our agents in the Soviet Union that I was exposing them to the full machinery of counter-espionage and the law and prosecution and capital punishment, certainly in the case of KGB and GRU officers. Obviously, these folks I knew would have to answer for what they'd done. And certainly I felt I inured myself against, you know, a reaction to that.
Dmitry Polyakov was one of the 25 agents betrayed by Ames. 10 were executed and 1 committed suicide. 1 alone was smuggled to safety by the British Secret Service.
I was seized by the KGB in May 1985. I was put under house arrest, but I managed to escape in July, alive, well, and safe. I was lucky. The others were shot in the dungeons of some KGB prison after long months of continuous threats and interrogations. They lost everything: family, children, work, and then their lives. They spent a year, 2 years, or in the case of General Polyakov, nearly 3 years, expecting to die at any minute.
Polyakov was tried in secret, critical of the Soviet leadership to the end. He had given the West precious information on Soviet missiles, nuclear strategy, chemical and biological warfare. Yet so many spies paid with their freedom or their lives in destructive cycles of tit for tat.
That men like Polyakov gave up names. They gave up secrets. I did the same thing for reasons that I considered sufficient to myself. I gave up the names of some of the same people who had earlier given up others. It's a nasty kind of circle with terrible human costs.
Aldrich Ames is serving a life sentence with no remission. Dmitry Polyakov was sentenced to death. He was executed in 1988 with a bullet in the back of the head, then buried in an unmarked grave.